Long ago, when the goddess Nuwa was repairing the sky, she melted down a great quantity of rock into 36,501 large building blocks. One single block was left unused. It lay at the foot of Green Sickness Peak and possessed magic powers. It could grow or shrink to any size it wanted. Later, a Buddhist monk and a Taoist priest brought this stone into the world of mortals, where, in time, it grew into one of the undisputed classics of Chinese literature, the story of the stone, also known as A Dream of Red Mansions. That laid-aside stone stands for both the protagonist of the novel, Jia Baoyu, and the author himself, Cao Xueqin.
Early in the story of the stone, known as A Dream of Red Mansions, Lin Daiyu has just arrived at the Jia household to meet Grandma Jia, her elders and cousins, when suddenly she notices something. Someone could be heard talking and laughing in a very loud voice in the inner courtyard behind them. "Oh dear, I'm late," said the voice. "I've missed the arrival of our guest." Daiyu thought, who can this new arrival be who is so brash and unmannerly? Even as she wondered, a beautiful young woman entered from the room behind the one they were sitting in, surrounded by a bevy of serving women and maids. She was dressed quite differently from the others present, gleaming like some fairy princess with sparkling jewels and gay embroideries. She had, moreover, eyes like a painted phoenix, eyebrows like willow eaves, a slender form, seductive grace. The ever-smiling summer face of hidden thunders showed no trace. The ever-bubbling laughter started almost before the lips were parted. "You don't know her," said Grandma Jia merrily. "She's a holy terror, this one. What we used to call in Nanjing a peppercorn. You just call her Peppercorn Feng."
林黛玉进贾府，这个大镜头给谁？给王熙凤，苏三姐姐的。苏三还没出来，里边叫一声苦啊，哗一声，大家就知道哦，这个人。人未见圣贤闻，好了，带王熙凤出场了，非常会做作，看着那个林黛玉，哦，就掉眼泪啊，哭一阵，然后说跟贾母说，哎呀，还在看看这个妹妹，不是我看不是外甥女儿，是你的孙女儿，当然讨贾母喜欢吗？
Wang Xifeng is from the Wang family which enjoys a reputation for extreme wealth. And from early childhood, she'd been brought up like a boy before she married Jia Lian, Baoyu's cousin. Thanks to the support and patronage of Lady Wang, her aunt and Baoyu's mother, she's the de facto manager of the Rong Mansion.
凤姐呢，又是心机深细的，是吧？这种机心呢，有的时候呢，表现为一种，一下就猜透了你的那个心思。咱们举例说，比如说那个大观园的诗社，凤姐去了，她说那个我也不知道什么干的湿的啊。 我一到任，我如果不先放下几十两银子啊，让你们做东道，那我不成了大观园的反叛了吗？所以要从这个说呢，他那个机心又是很有趣的，是吧？又是一种那个善解人意的。但是呢，更多的时候呢，凤姐的机心呢，是一种很可怕的。
In chapter 46, when Jia Shi wants to take Faithful, Grandma Jia's head maid, as his concubine, she protests strongly. Infuriated, Grandma Jia reprimands Lady Wang, but immediately feels embarrassed when Tan Chun makes her see that Lady Wang isn't at fault. So she blames Xifeng. "Why didn't you try to stop me?" I've been trying to restrain myself from blaming you for what's happened, said Xifeng. I don't know why you should pick on me. Grandma Jia's laughter was echoed by the others present. Oh, now this is interesting. I should like to know why you think I'm to blame for what has happened. You shouldn't be so good at training your girls, says Xifeng. When you've brought up a beautiful young bulrush like Faithful, can you blame other people for wanting her? Oh, replied Grandma Jia, laughing. So it's all my fault, is it? Of course it's your fault, says Xifeng. In that case, I won't try to keep her. Grandma Jia replies. You can take her back with you. Not just now, responds Xifeng. In my next life, perhaps. If I am a good girl in this life, I might be reborn as a man, and I can ask you for her then. Go on, take her with you, says Grandma Jia. You can give her to your Lian. See if that shameless father-in-law of yours still wants her then. Lian doesn't deserve her, said Xifeng. All he's fit for is a couple of sad old dumplings like me and Patience. This sets everyone laughing.
Experts believe that after finishing his teaching career at the right-wing school, Cao Xueqin went to live in the barracks in Western Hills in suburban Beijing around the year 1746, when he was around 30. During that time, apart from running errands for his superior, he lived a life of idleness. It was this pause in his career that gave him time to start writing A Dream of Red Mansions, or The Story of the Stone. It was said that Cao Xueqin, because of his Manchu identity, received a monthly ration of about 60 kilos of rice, along with 4 taels of silver, more than enough to satisfy his basic requirements. However, being a generous character who loved making friends as well as helping them financially, Cao Xueqin found that he could barely make ends meet. Dun Cheng, his student and friend, wrote a poem that summed up Cao Xueqin's lifestyle. Having porridge for meals while getting wine on credit. However, more recent studies reveal that Cao Xueqin's circumstances were not quite so straitened.
举驾十舟九长赊的诗句是怎么个意思呢？九长赊就是说他要经常的赊酒，他那个酒账他要赊钱。现在我没钱了，我还不起你，但是我的信用这很好，下个月关了响了，我再还钱呢。什么叫举家十粥呢？这个老北京人都知道，老北京人爱喝豆汁儿，特别是豆汁儿再就上油条吃，这是底层旗人的很好的早点。他们叫豆汁儿叫什么呢？就叫豆汁儿粥，这就是举家十粥的意思。老北京有个竹枝词嘛，叫豆汁儿粥，他是怎么说的呢？糟粕居然可做粥，老将分味论稀稠。糟粕就绿豆这个下脚料可以做粥啊，稠的就吃得饱一点呗，稀的呢就吃得差一点了呗。无分男女其来做，适口酸盐各一瓯。敦称敦敏兄弟都是宗室贵胄啊，吃的当然这很好了。看到曹雪芹吃的是齐营生活底层人喝的豆汁儿粥，吃的豆汁儿饭，当然十分诧异啊，故有此行文呢。
In The Story of the Stone, or The Dream of Red Mansions, Cao Xueqin named the place where he worked on the book for 10 years and rewrote it no less than 5 times, the Nostalgia Studio. It was later discovered that this humble study was in fact named Shelter from Wind. the wind referring not to the freezing winter air, but rather the corrupted trends of the time in which he lived. Wang Xifeng is, without a doubt, an embodiment of that decadent period as perceived by Cao Xueqin.
The Jias reside in two mansions, Rong and Ning, or west and east. Early in the story, when Qin Keqing, a young daughter-in-law of the Ning mansion, dies, her household falls into a state of chaos. Jia Zhen, the headmaster of the Ning mansion, wants Wang Xifeng to conduct Qin Keqing's funeral. According to the book, Xifeng, for her part, had always loved managing things and enjoyed showing off her ability to do so. Winning the approval by Lady Wang, Wang Xifeng accepts the responsibility. Then 5 major abuses come to her mind as being specially in need of attention. First, things were always getting lost in such a large and motley establishment. Second, lack of rational division of labour caused frequent escapes from responsibility. Third, money was always getting misappropriated or misspent. Fourth, the rewards and hardships were unfairly distributed. And fifth, some well-connected servants were so arrogant and undisciplined that they brook no restraint, while others could win no advancement. These were century-old problems, so Wang Xifeng is right on point, especially with respect to the house servant system. Many servants had been serving the family for 3 or 4 generations, greatly complicating the situation in terms of relationships and personal interests. No wonder she encounters problems setting up an efficient management system. So, for the following month, Wang Xifeng comes to the Ning mansion early in the morning every day to make sure everyone's doing their job. One morning, an inspection of the roster shows that one woman responsible for the reception of relatives and friends of the family absent. Someone was sent to fetch her, and presently the woman arrived, flustered and fearful. "So it is you," said Xifeng with a chilling smile. "I suppose you thought that because you have a somewhat more ladylike job than the rest, you could afford to disobey my orders. I should have liked to let you off, but if I'm lenient with you the first time, it will be much harder for me to deal with someone else the second time. So I am obliged to make an example of you." Her face hardened as she pronounced sentence. "Take her out and give her 20 strokes of the bamboo." The wretched woman was half dragged from the room and the flogging administered. Then Xifeng threw down one of the tallies, ordering to stop a month's pay from the woman's wage. From that day onwards, the staff of the Ning mansion realized just how formidable Xifeng could be, and went about their duties in fear and trembling, not daring to idle or delay. This phoenix in a bad time came. All praised her great ability. Qin Keqing's funeral turns out to be an extravagant occasion. However, Wang Xifeng's success in managing the Ning mansion is down to 2 factors. 1, the support of Grandma Jia and Lady Wang, as well as Jia Zhen's promise of generous financial support. And 2, the obedience of the servants. Both contribute to Wang Xifeng's dazzling triumph.
王熙凤当然不是什么善良的货色，但是这家如果离了王熙凤，就会更加混乱，经济上也会更加混乱，秩序上也会更加混乱。
On the night of Qin Keqing's burial, Wang Xifeng stays in the Water Moon Priory, where a nun named Yurgesia seizes the opportunity to ask her for a favor. Zhang, a wealthy man in Chang'an, has a daughter named Jingge, who, as arranged by Zhang, was to marry the son of a captain in the Chang'an garrison, whom the girl loved. But then Zhang changed his mind and wanted her daughter to marry the son of the governor instead. The captain's family refused to cancel the betrothal, so Zhang asked Yurgesia to talk to Wang Xifeng as an attempt to use the powerful Jia family to scare the captain away. Put on her mettle by Yurgesia's wiles, Wang Xifeng announces, You've known me a long time. You know that I've never believed all that talk about hell and damnation. If I decide that I want to do something, I do it, no matter what it is. Tell them that if they are prepared to pay out 3,000 taels of silver, I will undertake to relieve them of their trouble." The prioress was delighted. They will, no doubt about it." "Mind you," said Xifeng, "I'm not one of your money-grubbing, run-of-the-mill go-betweens. I'm not doing this for the money. Every bit of this 3,000 taels will go into the pockets of my boys or towards their expenses." Then, having received the money, Wang Xifeng has a letter written in her husband's name to the captain's commanding officer, who helped sort things out in secrecy.
王熙凤啊，她在这个利己主义和提防这个对手方面，她是一个很精致的一个人，很精道、很老道的一个人。还有这个王熙凤，没有什么同情心和恐惧心。比如说那个贾瑞想跟他对他调情，那么他对贾瑞很看不起，这个是可以的。他把贾瑞骂回去，也完全是可以的。但是居然他设计了一个圈套，把这个贾瑞呀往死了整，是无论如何是他显示出了一种恶狠狠的心理，甚至于显示了他本身的一种由于这个封建社会对女性的压抑，所以他造成的一种变态的心理，一种害男人的心理。所以他弄权呢，就是在这个寺庙道士里托他一件小事，这小事跟他根本毫无关系，但是他说呢，我不能不办，我要不办显得我这点手段还没有，所以就是说他要显示出自己的手眼通天。他把这个行私舞弊，变成了表演自己的权势威风的一个机会，这当然也很让人看着很反感。
Unexpectedly, Jingge and the captain's son, each loyal to the other, commit suicide because of the thwarted marriage. Cao Xueqin, the literary giant, fills The Story of the Stone or A Dream of Red Mansions with subtle hints foreshadowing later developments. According to Tu Ying, an expert on the book in the Qing dynasty, Skybright is Dayu's shadow and Aroma Baochai's. The destiny of the young couple whose union Wang Xifeng ruins is in fact a premonition of the fate of Baoyu and Dayu.
Zhou Liwen, a late Qing dynasty intellectual, once cited the following story. Heshen, a powerful courtier favored by Emperor Qianlong, presented the story of the stone to the latter. When the emperor finished the book with pleasure, he said to Heshen, "This is in fact the story of Mingju's family." He meant Nara Mingju, a minister of the late Emperor Kangxi. There's something to Qianlong's assessment. Nara Xingde, Mingju's son, was a renowned poet in the Qing dynasty and a close friend of Cao Yan, Cao Xueqin's grandfather. This young man of Manchu origin has often been regarded as the real-life model for the character Jia Baoyu. When he oversaw the compilation of the Siku Chuanshu, or complete library in the 4 branches of literature, Heshen, citing the emperor's order as an excuse, banned or destroyed a great many precious books from former dynasties. Why then did he make an exception for the story of the stone? The most obvious reason is that Cao Xueqin's approach was extremely cryptic. It could also be, however, that he was simply overwhelmed by his exceptional work of art. Heshen was something of a literary talent himself, but he was more like Wang Xifeng in terms of his greed and general conduct in society. In 1775, Emperor Qianlong, then 64 years old, went on another tour that autumn. Being in a good mood, the emperor started a conversation with one of his bodyguards, asking about his age, name, and experience. The young man was Heshen, then aged 26. Impressed by his good manners, the emperor went on to ask about his official titles. Heshen answered that he had sat the provincial examination but failed. Then, when the emperor asked if he still remembered anything from the exam paper, Heshen said yes, then recited the entire paper word by word. Qianlong was pleasantly surprised, so he tested Heshen's capacity by sending him on several errands, which Heshen handled with perfection, thereby earning the emperor's full trust. Soon, Heshen was on a winning streak, winning promotion after promotion. Eventually, he would become Grand Minister of State and Prime Minister.
乾隆呢需要一个人给他搞钱，那么和珅，头脑很精明，既能办事儿，又善于这个理财，所以乾隆在晚年发现和珅这样一个人才呢，他是大喜过望的，非常高兴，因为他找到了一个非常得力的助手，所以这个和珅的这个身份呢，这个角色呀，应该就有点像王熙凤在贾府当中，在这个贾母面前的这样一个位置，能够替贾母办很多事儿，能够让他这个不必为日常生活的这个柴米油盐去费心，就能够过上比较舒服的日子，这可能是和珅和王熙凤相似的这样一个地方。
In contemporary TV drama and literature, Heshen is often depicted as a jester, but in real life, his rise came about because of genuine perception and talent. As a teenager, Heshen studied in the school at the Palace of Universal Peace, which was established by the royal court inside the Forbidden City for educating the elites of the 8 banners. Interestingly, Cao Xueqin himself was a student at the same school some 30 years before Heshen. After he gained power, Heshen's greed, too, grew out of control. Everyone in the government except for the emperor knew how corrupt he was. By the end of Emperor Qianlong's reign, bribery had become common practice. Heshen, a graduate of the 8 Banners elite school, ended up digging the Qing dynasty's grave. Thanks to his endless bribe-taking, it was his example that gave rise to the countless venal officials who drained the empire of its very lifeblood.
Wang Xifeng's excessive greed, too, is known to everyone in the Jia household, except for heads of the house, such as Grandma Jia, Jia Zheng, and Lady Wang. In one instance, Aroma, Bao Yu's head maid, asks Patience, Xifeng's chambermaid, what's happened to this month's allowances? Even her old ladyships and her ladyship's people haven't had theirs yet. Don't ask me about that, please, Patience said in a low, agitated voice. Whatever it is, you'll only have another day or two to wait, I promise you. Aroma was amused to see her so agitated. Why? What's the matter? Why should you be in such a state about it? Patience dropped her voice even lower. Mrs. Lian has already put the money for this month's allowances out at interest. Aroma laughs. But she's not short of money. She's got plenty. What does she want to go giving herself all this extra worry for?
当王熙凤她的欲望是不断膨胀的，比如说她对钱财的欲望，她不是拿了那个月钱去放债吗？不只是丫头下人，连贾母王夫人的钱她都敢。所以王熙凤不错，她是一个当家人，她是一根顶梁柱，同时又是一只大蛀虫。
And in European understanding and morality, this kind of character where you put your own aims in front and neglect the interests of the family clan is understood in a negative way.
Mrs. Yo, stepmother of Lady Yo Shi of the Ning Mansion, has a daughter named Jie, who's pretty and gentle. Incited by Jia Zhen and his son Jia Lian, who's a playboy, marries Jie in secret during the time of state and family mourning, then keeps her in a house out in the city. When Wang Xifeng finds out what her husband did, she's furious, telling Patience, "You heard that? You and I are both dead, Patience. We don't exist anymore." Then, after learning the whole story by interrogating a house servant, Xifeng grows angrier the more she thinks about it. She lays back with her head on the pillow and gives herself up wholly to her thoughts. Presently, she frowns, as if an idea has just occurred to her.
王熙凤的尴尬，她是一个霸王似的人物，呼风唤雨啊，长袖善舞，要风得风，要雨得雨。可是她有一个处境是不能说的，就是在古代封建社会家族里面，她没有儿子，所以这种尴尬的处境呢，可能会导致她日后的落寞或倒台。
While Jia Lian is out on official business, Xifeng comes to Jie's place unexpectedly and, acting as an understanding wife, asks Jie to move into the wrong mansion. Adopting a submissive tone, she says, "Provided that you put in an occasional good word for me with Mr. Lian, so that I am still left some ground to stand on, I should even be willing to hold your basin and comb your hair for you and wait on you like a servant." She concludes this discourse by breaking into ostentatious weeping. Jie, fooled by her act, is convinced that she's a kind person and therefore agrees with pleasure to move into the mansion. After tricking Jie into moving in, Wang Xifeng reveals her true identity as a shrew. She rushes into the Ning mansion to curse at Yo Shi, Jie's elder sister and Jia Zhen's wife. "Nobody else wanted that precious sister of yours, so you had to foist her onto our family. Anyone would think all the other men in the world had died, and only our Jia ones were left." She then tells her that Jiang Hua, who was engaged to Jie, has filed a lawsuit against the Jia household, but that she's managed to neutralize the crisis by taking 500 taels of silver out of her own pocket. In fact, it was Wang Xifeng who encouraged Zhang Hua to make a scene, and she only spent 300 taels, so that while stirring up trouble in the house, she's even made a profit of 200 taels. Wang Xifeng manipulates everyone, including Jie, Jialian, Youshi, Grandma Jia, and even the government. At first, a strong instinct of self-preservation prompts Zhang Hua to refuse, which angers Wang Xifeng so much that she disparages him as a young idiot. She gives an order to Brighty, a servant, "Tell him he can charge this family with high treason for all I care." Later, having deemed Zhang Hua useless, Wang Xifeng asks Brighty to kill both Zhang Hua and his father. Fortunately, Brighty is a soft-hearted person, so he lets father and son go.
王熙凤的这个所谓杀伐决断，我们说他还有一种不留后路的绝情，是吧？你说像那个张华，就是留有把柄的，他最后一定要把他灭口。老实说，连贾雨村对门子都没有这么决绝。所以我们说王熙凤的这个烂呢，就是这种地方是真是令人这个毛骨悚然的。
Jie, after moving into the mansion, is frequently bullied and humiliated by Jialian's maids and servants, while Wang Xifeng is all smiles and loving sympathy. On a visit to Jie, Wang Xifeng says to her, "If the servants are not giving you satisfaction, my dear, or are being insubordinate, do let me know and I shall have them beaten." Then she speaks harshly to the maids and older women who are present. "If I hear one word of complaint from Mrs. R, I shall have you slaughtered." Impressed by the concern that Wang Xifeng shows for her, Jie thinks, "With her to stick up for me, there is really no need for me to do anything myself."
首先呢，他要占据一个制高点。他把尤二姐请到大观园里面来，主动把她请进来，这个目的呢，就是先要摘掉这个杜的帽子，是吧？就是你看，我不是容不得人，是吧？不是容不得尤二姐。其次呢，他要把尤二姐推到一个名叫罪人的地位，说你尤二姐，你本来是有丈夫的，悔婚再嫁，而贾琏呢是国孝家孝之中两重罪，是吧？自己呢先占了一个制高点，然后把对方推到一个名叫罪人的地位，然后王熙凤使出了手段，他唆使张华去告，但是他又不使他告倒，是吧？就是他用衙门的法，是吧？再用家族的礼，再造足了舆论，是吧？再放出秋桐，把这一切都布置好了之后，就使得尤二姐陷入了一张罗网当中。
Patience, out of sympathy for Jie, often brings her food. When Wang Xifeng finds out, she abuses Patience angrily. Most people keep a cat to keep down the mice for them. My cat seems to eat the chickens. Later, when Jie loses her baby, when an unqualified doctor gives her an abortion, she has no more reason to live and commits suicide by swallowing gold.
She's ruthless. I mean, she's in a way more dangerous than Pan Jinlian, because she actually is more subtle. Pan Jinlian is just physical, she's just sexual. Wang Xifeng is psychological, her plot to destroy Jia Rui is just diabolical, she's a very dangerous woman. And of course, later on she destroys, You Erjie, and that's also a terrible story.
Even after Jie killed herself, Wang Xifeng's act wasn't over. Long afterwards, she said to Jialian, "The day after tomorrow is the anniversary of Jie's death. Since we were sisters for a little while, I thought the least I could do was visit her grave and make her a few offerings. Jia Lian, put to shame by her words, says after a lengthy pause, "You are very thoughtful." Finally, in chapter 105, when the Jia family is raided by the imperial bodyguards for having connived with a provincial official and has used his influence to persecute a defenseless citizen, Wang Xifeng's life savings, no less than 80,000 taels of silver, which she gained from loaning money along with promissory notes, is discovered. Wang Xifeng, as described in the book, listened wide-eyed as Patience told her tale, and then slumped onto the floor with her head thrown back. Despite having a powerful friend in court, the Prince of Beijing no less, the Jia household is unable to clean its name of the shame of usury. This ultimately ends up being the straw that breaks the back of 4 powerful families, the Jias included. This ultimate destiny is indicated at the beginning of the book. Each day they grumble they've not made enough. When they've enough, it's good night, everyone.
王熙凤这个人物的一生啊，应该说，早在太虚幻境的册子当中，有判词，也有这个图画。那么王熙凤的图画是一个冰山，上边站着一个凤凰，这个凤凰呢，那么它象征的意义是什么呢？冰山倒下来了，凤凰就没有落脚的地方了，所以它的结局是一个悲剧的结局。随着冰山的融化，也就是说，当宁国府、永国府、贾家败落的时候，你会比别人更差。
王熙凤是整本小说里边写的最好的一个人物。我讲的写得好，不是说他可爱啊，不是说他这个好的，是吧？我讲的小说的技巧，活脱脱的是一个世俗的人物。贾府倒了，贾母死了，王熙凤就没有靠山了，最后也是很凄凉。所以呢，他的判词说嘛说整个贾家讲他也是，呼啦啦如大厦倾，昏惨惨是灯将尽。
王熙凤实际是一个令人感到矛盾的人物。再比如说，王熙凤对这个刘姥姥态度就非常好啊，刘姥姥跟他拐着七拐八弯也谈不上有什么关系，他也不可能求刘姥姥做什么事儿，但是他对刘姥姥非常好，因为刘姥姥这人也会说话，会处事儿，是吧？我觉得这些地方。我们也还要看到王熙凤应运而生的这一面，而不是简单的把她看成一个十恶不赦的坏人。
When Emperor Qianlong reached the 60th year of his reign, he appointed Yong Yan, his 15th son, as his heir, who then ascended the throne. Heshen, who received the news in advance, hurried to the crown prince's mansion to offer him a Ru Yi scepter. The two exchanged a look of tacit agreement. At that moment, Heshen, smart as he was, must have been thinking that he'd chosen the perfect time to swear allegiance to his new master. But what was Yong Yan, who would become Emperor Jia Qing, thinking? His assured ascension to the throne surely was a blessing from heaven, but the good news was somewhat tarnished by the fact that it was brought to him by a despicable scoundrel like Heshen.
Heshen 到后来呢，也有点狂妄自大，没有把这个嘉庆放在眼里，所以嘉庆对他是非常痛恨 嘉庆虽然当了皇帝，但是什么事儿呢都决定不了。那么乾隆呢，岁数也大了，很多事儿呢也记不住。实际上就是和珅决定了很多事情，这就在这个他和嘉庆之间呢，就埋下了很深的这个矛盾和仇恨。
3 years later, Qianlong died. Right away, Emperor Cao Xueqin moved to arrest Heshen, charging him with 20 felonies. The most serious one being that one day before the official announcement of Yongyan being named crown prince, Heshen had offered him a Ruyi scepter to show his personal loyalty. This was an obvious and flagrant breach of confidence. Heshen's fate parallels a line from a song in the book that criticizes Wang Xifeng. Too shrewd by half, with such finesse you wrought, that your own life in your own toils was caught. Whether in the reign of Emperor Kangxi or Qianlong or Jia Qing, from Naru Mingju to Heshen, powerful officials and their rise and fall, often because of corruption, cast a deep shadow over those times. Cao Xueqin believed that the great Qing dynasty, with all its glories, was a ship sailing towards an abyss. The only question was, who had steered it in the wrong direction? Undoubtedly, it was the likes of Heshen. Heshen was executed in 1799 AD, just before he turned 49. Even though the 19th century had only just dawned on this ancient Oriental empire, the age of flourishing that had characterized the early Qing dynasty was already over. Perspicaciously, it was Cao Xueqin with his mighty pen who had written its obituary. Tacitly and subtly, he had pinpointed the malaise that would bring the dynasty to its end. And he had good reason to be subtle. During Emperor Qianlong's reign, the infamous literary inquisition reached its peak. Back in those days, writing the wrong word could cost you your life. That's why Cao Xueqin became a master of dancing in shackles. On the one hand, he brilliantly recreated a corrupted time in dazzling disguise. On the other hand, he deliberately made the story of the stone a riddle. All it lacked was the authentication of a dynasty and date. On the surface, it was just the rustic words from the land of illusions. He was successful. The book, a work of pure rebellion, managed to survive the censorship of Emperor Qianlong and his courtier Heshen.
《红楼梦》实际上它是按照2条线索发展的，一条是家族衰亡的线索，一条是以贾宝玉、林黛玉、薛宝钗等等年轻人为代表的一群青年男女的人生悲剧、爱情悲剧、家庭悲剧、婚宴悲剧。而他通过一个贵族家庭的衰落的描写，通过在贵族家庭衰落过程当中一些年轻的悲剧，深刻地表达了作者对人生、对社会一些思考。他告诉你，贵族家庭为什么会衰落了，为什么是不配享有更好的命运。他告诉你，这么漂亮的小伙子，这么美的姑娘，这么有才华的姑娘，他们为什么最后都走上悲剧？那么都是因为社会 都是那个时代造成的。
In the Guizhou Provincial Museum in Guiyang City, one of the most precious items is a compendium of artworks titled Drawings by the Celery Farmer. Over the course of the 25 years since its discovery, more and more researchers have tended to view that the author was none other than Cao Xueqin. That means that the author of A Dream of Red Mansions or The Story of the Stone penned another masterpiece. Contrary to the expectations of many, the drawings weren't of elegant and beautiful young people, but rather of apparently insignificant things such as yams, radishes, aubergines, watermelons, as well as withered lotuses, crab apples, stones, lingji, or reishi mushrooms. In other words, all the things that Cao Xueqin saw during his daily life in the Western Hills in Beijing.
有一首诗呢，后面前头这个引首的地方呢盖了一个印，我们一看以前没有变出来，叫做忆昔茜纱窗。忆就是回忆，昔就是过去，茜纱窗呢就是小说里面常常提到的一个东西，所以我们有机会看到这个文坛巨人，除了《红楼梦》小说之外呢，另外一个诗书画印俱全的作品。
Besides being a brilliant poet, Cao Xueqin was a painter too. After turning middle-aged, he developed the habit of calling himself Celery Gatherer or Celery Farmer, a nickname for intellectuals used in ancient Chinese classics. Meanwhile, gathering and farming celery was indeed part of his daily life, just like Tao Qian, whom he admired and mentioned on several occasions in the novel. Writing and working in the Western Hills, Cao Xueqin occasionally refers to himself in the book. For example, when Jia Zheng asks Bao Yu to compose a couplet for the Sweet Rice Village in the Prospect Garden, the latter blurts out without thinking, "Emergent buds swell where the washerwoman soaks her cloth. A fresh tang rises where the celery gatherer fills his pannier." It's just possible to imagine a knowing smile creeping across Cao Xueqin's face when he wrote these lines.